So if you trained according to your genotype, there were, at least with the genes that we have now that they're measuring, you had a much better outcome. Well, when they did the reverse and they trained them opposite to the genotype, the number of negative responders or low responders was huge.
Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. This podcast is brought to you by HitUni.com. HitUni.com are a provider of amazing online courses for high-intensity training qualifications. HitUni comes highly recommended by the best in the field, including Body by Science co-author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, and trainer and founder of Baye.com, Drew Baye. It was founded by my friend, author, and longtime personal trainer Simon Shawcross, who's also been a guest on the podcast. Simon has 15 years experience training clients and has supervised over 15,000 high-intensity training workouts. Using knowledge from experts like Skyler, Dr. James Steele, Dr. Ellington Darden, HitUni is a goldmine for learning everything to do with high-intensity training. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace. There's online support and a discussion forum where you can share ideas and ask for help. To learn more about high-intensity training and improve my own results, I started their personal trainer course. The content is amazing, the courses are really easy to follow, and each section is organized into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one. I should also mention there is a DIY course. So this is the course for you if you're not necessarily a personal trainer, but you want to learn more about high-intensity training and how to implement it for maximum benefit in your own exercise regime. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's HITUNI.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, pick your course, and enter the coupon code CW10 for 10% discount. Thank you for your support. Hey guys, I am Lawrence Neal and welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior, the podcast that teaches you how to optimize your high-intensity training protocol and your high-intensity training business to help you achieve your health, fitness, and business goals. My former guests include people like Dr. Ted Naiman, David Landau, Ryan Hall, Mike Lepowski, Dr. Doug McGuff, Dr. James Steele, Keith Norris, and many more. This is part 2 of my roundtable with Drew Baye, Ryan Hall, and Skyler Tanner. These 3 guys are some of the top exercise experts on the planet right now. So if you haven't already, go and listen to part 1 first and then come back and listen to this one. I am so excited to get this episode out to you that I'm trying not to rush the process and screw things up, which I've done in the past because I get so stressed out trying to get stuff out quickly. In this episode, we cover a review of my episode with Andy Galpin, PhD. Andy felt that traditional high-intensity training fell short in covering all of the bases for exercising for health and was suboptimal for muscle hypertrophy. So we all discuss everyone's thoughts about that interview. We also cover high-intensity training and high-intensity interval training. Is it worth doing high-intensity interval training as an adjunct to HIIT? And is there any evidence to support the notion that nothing cuts you up like sprints? We get really deep into the history of super slow, which I practically know nothing about. So this was super interesting to me. And it fascinated me to learn just how tough the super slow exercise guild was to pass. And we cover much, much more. For all of the show notes and links for this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org. And don't forget to hang around at the end of this episode for your free gift. And now I give you part 2 of an awesome roundtable with Drew Baye, Skyler Turner, and Ryan Hall. Okay, so recently I interviewed Andy Galpin, PhD, who's fairly well known within the MMA community, working with a number of athletes, which, you know, as we've discussed, guys, can pose some problems. But is renowned for being an expert on muscle fiber. We've all had you guys all had a listen to that episode. When I was talking to Andy, there are a few things he said where I was like, that's interesting. I don't know enough to ask a follow-up question to unpack that, but I know that I feel like it's not quite right. And you guys are obviously far more knowledgeable than me and are able to do that. So I'm just really curious, Ryan, like what stood out for you in that episode that you felt was perhaps, you know, not completely accurate?
You know, Lawrence, it's interesting because as I listened to it, I found myself agreeing with the general science that he was talking about, as far as just from a scientific perspective, searching for the truth and it depends and all this other stuff, what your subject population is, yada, yada, yada. And I think it's very, very important to define your subject population. I almost always talk about the results that I get and the data that I collect in regard to my subject population. I usually almost always say that. And I think it's very, very important to list that. And so, you know, one of the things that, and I don't necessarily think he meant it this way, that, you know, you have to move fast in order to be fast. I'd say, yeah, you have to move fast at that activity in order to be fast at that activity. But do I have to sleep fast? Do I have to take a shit? Do I have to shit fast? I mean, is that going to make me slow if I'm on the toilet and I decide to crank one out a little bit? So, I mean, the whole deal is if you're fast in the weight room, you're going to be fast in the weight room until you get injured. And if you want to be fast in the football field, you go out in the field in pads and do sprints. But honestly, with my subject population, none of that's going to matter. I mean, most of my clients are going to be 60s, 70s, 80s. We have some younger people too, but I can't see me taking one of my 80-year-olds and having them go out to do, wind sprints. And there's no need for that person to do that. That's irrelevant. Now, is it relevant for the subject population that Andy is working with? I'd say probably to some extent, yeah. Although I think if they just practice their sport, that's going to be a lot better than doing any agility work or speed work, whatever you want to call it.
The thing is, sorry to cut you off, Ryan. Just want to put this into context. So I did actually ask Andy specifically. I wasn't talking about a workout regimen for athletes. I was saying, he was saying there was a lot of downsides and holes to practicing a high intensity training protocol for your entire lifetime. And, he said foot speed was one of those things, in that I think he used the example of someone who to reach their foot out to stop them from falling. And I kind of thought to myself, well, I thought that, if you're training muscles, increasing strength and muscle mass, etc., you are going to, you are going to retain the ability to do that in that event.
Yeah.
That was my understanding, but so sorry. So I just wanted to, if you want to carry on, Ryan, and address that.
Well,
so
if Ryan, you go ahead.
I'm almost done, but it's not like you. So none of us here, and Skyler touched on it. I'd probably agree with him 100%. None of us here are recommending that you train once a week with high intensity and then go sit on your tush for the rest of the week. I think most of us are advocates of frequent activity. So in that case, if my client walks and walks quickly, I don't see where that's an issue. There is research, and Andy did mention this, when older subjects were put on high-intensity resistance training programs, the average, now he didn't quote this study, but the average gait speed increased 48%.
You regularly see 6-minute walk test distance go up drastically in community-dwelling women in their 70s with just strength training.
Yep. Yes. Totally. And so that would be, I'm done. Drew can take over.
Yeah.
He hasn't spoken for like 10 minutes. So
there is so much wrong with all this. I'm going to try and do this in an orderly fashion, but the first and the biggest problem is that a lot of people, like Skyler mentioned, they confuse exercise and training. And I think that a lot of what appears to be disagreements in how to go about things between different groups is actually disagreements in terminology. Now, there's still disagreements in how to go about things, but I think if everybody got their definitions straight, we'd find that we agree on more things than we think we do. When you are training to be faster at something, you have a bunch of different components. You have strength, your ability to produce force, and then you have your skill in the particular activity, how efficiently you can perform that movement. The less wasted motions that are involved, the more quickly you're going to be able to do that. And if you want to be fast at something, you have to, if you want to be as fast as you can at something, you have to become as strong as possible. And you also have to become as skilled as possible in performing the movement in a way that is efficient, that is faster. Now, from the strength training standpoint, you don't have to strength train fast to get stronger. But you have to practice. Once you've learned the skill correctly, you have to gradually increase the speed you practice the skill at so that you are able to do that skill quickly. Now, let me give you an example. Suppose that the most weight you can lift in an exercise one time is 100 pounds. If that's as much as you can lift with a maximum effort, you are not going to be able to move it very quickly. But if you were to take 50 pounds, then you'd be able to lift that very quickly, be able to toss it up and down a bunch of times without much effort. It's half of what you could lift. Now, if you were to increase your strength so that you are now able to lift 200 pounds with a maximum effort, that 100 pounds that you could previously just barely lift and only lift slowly would now be 50%. And then you could lift that as quickly as you could previously lift that 50 pounds. To be able to move quickly, to accelerate against something, just requires that you are able to produce more force. The stronger a muscle is, regardless of how you built that strength, you are going to be able to produce more force and accelerate more rapidly. In fact, if you were to not even move, if you were to just train isometrically, as long as you are training all of the muscles that are involved in the movement without doing any skill training, with only isometric training, which is as slow as you can get, you would get faster. You wouldn't get as fast as you could be, but you would get faster. Now, on the other hand, if you were to do nothing but very slow training, and you were to do no skill training at all, you never practiced the skill, you wouldn't be as fast as you could be. And somebody else who strength trained with fast speeds and who practiced the skill quickly, they might, because again, you can build strength slowly, you could build strength at fast speeds. Slower is going to be safer, but there's a lot of speeds that can be effective if the level of effort is high. That person might appear to get better results because of that, but you don't need it. You don't need to train any more quickly than you do when you're lifting. And the reason this is important is because if you want to do something where you're moving very quickly, you have to practice quickly. And there's a certain risk inherent in that. And that's unavoidable because you have to do that if you want to become as fast as possible in that particular skill. But you don't have to strength train quickly to increase the strength that contributes to your speed and other activities. And to do so doesn't provide you any advantage. It simply increases your risk. And I know a lot of people say, oh, rate of force development and all this stuff. No, because the rate of force development in a specific activity, in that specific skill, will improve with practicing the skill. You don't have to do it during the strength training. Everything that And this is the other thing, a lot of people, because I know he mentioned agility and some other things there too. There are specific and there are general adaptations from exercise. When you're doing an exercise, you are stimulating improvements in muscular strength. And through that, there's going to be improvements in bone density and connective tissue strength. It's going to have an effect on cardiovascular and metabolic conditioning. There will be some effect on flexibility and mobility depending on the specific range of motion used. And there will also be a very specific effect in that you will improve your skill at performing the exercise. All of those general things carry over to everything else you do. If you get stronger in an exercise that involves certain muscles, everything you do that involves those muscles, you're going to be better at. You're going to be stronger, you're going to be faster, you're going to be more explosive, whatever you want to call it. But the only specific adaptation, the only specific improvement is in the exact exercise skill. Now, agility is not something that agility is basically your ability to quickly change direction when you're doing things. If you're stronger, you can do that because you can apply more force in whichever muscle groups are required to change the direction. You're not going to become more agile at a specific particular movement unless you practice that movement too, or I should say, the strength training will make you more agile in general, regardless of whether you do specific agility drills. If you want to be more agile in a particular type of movement, then you have to practice that. But to say that strength training doesn't carry over to agility is simply wrong, because the strength and the flexibility and those other things and improvements in body composition will benefit agility. It's just that it is not going to have a specific effect on the skills of the agility in a particular type of movement. And the other problem, the idea that, you've got to train this way for hypertrophy and this way for limit, strength and this way for speed and this way for power and all that, also ignores the fact that these benefits from strength are general. All those things, hypertrophy is going to come with strength. Now, it's going to come at a different rate for different people and depending on other things that they're doing, but there's no training for hypertrophy versus just training for strength. If you are training for one, you're going to have a degree of the other. There's no training, or I should say there's no exercise. Again, here, this is where the language becomes tricky. There's no specific exercising just to increase power versus these other things. Exercise will make you stronger. Your power output will improve with your strength. If you want to be more powerful in a specific activity, then you're practicing it, but that's different than exercise. Speed, all this stuff. People talk about periodization, for example. We got to have this phase for that, and this phase for that, and this phase for that, and all this other stuff, which, again, long-term, nonsense. All of your limits in these things are genetically dictated. If you just focus on getting stronger, and you focus on doing it in a way that also addresses these other factors, cardiovascular and metabolic conditioning. And if you, in addition to your exercise, include specific training for the activities you want to be better at, then you are going to have all of these benefits without having to periodize your training or separate it into I'm going to do a hypertrophy phase for a few weeks and I'm going to do a speed phase for a few weeks. All of that's completely unnecessary. It's oh boy. And in terms of the older people and the balance risk, the problem here's the thing: to maintain your balance just means keeping your center of gravity over your base and being able to adjust your base as your center of gravity moves. To be able to do that requires two things. You've got to have a nervous system that functions properly, that tells your body where things are in space and what movements need to be made to keep things where they should be. And then you need a muscular system that can effectively execute the commands it gets from your nervous system. Now, if a person has neurological problems, exercise is probably not going to do that much for them. Although there is some research now showing that there's a lot of benefits from strength training for people with multiple sclerosis, things like that. So maybe there is some, but I don't want to assume. However, if you got a functioning nervous system, the stronger you are, again, the more quickly you'll be able to move. You don't have to train fast. If you get stronger, you're going to be able to move faster. The stronger you are, the better you will be able to move, either to correct your posture or to move your foot out underneath to catch you, regardless of whether you did super slow or whether you did just isometrics or whether you moved quickly. In any case, if you get stronger, you're going to be able to catch yourself. You don't need to train fast to do that, though. There's no advantage to training quickly, but you do have the downside, especially when you're talking about older populations, of the increased risk of injury.
Yeah. No, nicely said, Drew. And what I was going to ask you, actually, if you're comfortable potentially posting those bullets on the actual blog post for people to see.
I'll have to go through and condense some of them because I just wrote them on the fly. Actually, as I was listening to Andy's podcast here, I was making taking notes of all the things that he got wrong that I wanted to address, and I think I stopped when I got after 30 something.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a list.
Guys, I've got 18 minutes here, so I could probably speak in 18 minutes about this one topic. But that's. Do you know what
I'll tell you what, Skyler. This is. Thank you for mentioning that. So there's one question I really want to ask all three of you. So I was going to ask how much time you had anyway. Skyler, what I want to ask, I'll tell you what, if you want to talk for 5 minutes or 10 minutes about the Andy Galpin interview, and then I'll ask you this question, and after that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add a little bit more detail to what was already spoken about. But yeah. So I mean, I've got a couple of these studies that were posted recently by Schoenfeld about like speed of training and like these functional outcomes. And one of the great things about it is when you have the data and the actual study, which, through clandestine means here, you'll see, like, for example, you will see, high velocity training results in greater strength adaptations than low velocity training. But if you actually look at the functional measure, the get up and go in this case, in these elderly individuals, they can only say that there's a trend improvement after 6 weeks, right? That they improved basically the same, but we think mathematically, given a long enough time frame, the high velocity group might result in better outcomes based on the previous 6 weeks of improvement. Or, as we've talked about, they might have gotten more of the improvement in the short term, and in the longer term, it's going to be the same. And a lot of these studies, like this one, for example, they didn't have a control group that just practiced the get up and go test, and they probably would have seen the same improvement or a very similar improvement versus the strength training group. So sometimes it's study design, sometimes it is the idea too of poorly defined like agility versus functional movement. Functional can mean a lot of different things. It can be movement specific. It could be muscle or joint specific. It can be velocity specific, which is if you got to run fast, you should practice running fast. Like that's a velocity specific. That's very functional. It's movement direction specific, So you've got a lot of things going on or things that are called functional movements that look nothing like the movement they're supposed to be improving the function of. And finally, quickly, agility. I remember in graduate school, I was fortunate enough to have advanced motor learning with a decathlete. He was a Division I decathlete. And the best part was that the teacher had us do a bunch of novel agility and motor skills And of course, what happened was he was no better than anybody else on average because it was novel. Now, he might, as evidenced by the fact he was a decathlete, learn these things better or faster or more. But the idea that his training, which was comprehensive and varied, did not gift him with some sort of immutable agility increase in the face of novel stimuli, gives you a clue into the fact that training for agility as a category, it's very poorly defined because it becomes a moving target. It's like no true Scotsman. The idea of we don't do it that way. That's not the type of periodization we're talking about. Because, we had an example of these athletes tapering and periodizing for the World Championships last month, and I guess 2 months ago, early August, late July. And very few of them set personal records or world records, right? Well, the periodization should have done that, right? It should have, by definition, allowed them to peak at the right time, and it didn't. So that idea of needing that, now managing trainee or athlete workloads throughout a year, absolutely necessary, because there's no such thing as a constant peak. That's a plateau. But that doesn't mean like you need to manage you might need to manage their total training volume or strength training volume in the face of their activity specific volume. And these numbers go up and down. And that's part of the art of working with an athlete. But then to suggest that you can magically mix that formula to predict when the athlete will peak perfectly, that's a fool's errand, because it doesn't bear out in the real world.
Yeah. Good answers, Skyler. Okay, guys. So I'm going to fast forward this question because I want an answer from Skyler, and obviously he's got a jet soon. And it's a business question. So, Skyler, starting with you, as you probably have to leave after your answer. If you had $2,500 to build your own garage gym, how would you equip it?
Luke. Let's see, business, and immediately go. That's a great question, Lawrence. Let me give you the full Luke here. Drew, how much is your the plans for your new piece? Because that'd probably be a good answer right there.
How much does it cost to build it, or how much?
You said you were going to release the plan. You said you were going to. Yeah, well. No, I'm not asking for the profit margin. I was asking for, because you were talking about releasing like plans for somebody to have it built locally to save on the shipping.
Oh boy, because I've had a bunch of people from overseas that wanted to buy one. I'm probably going to end up just selling the plans for about $100.
Yeah, there you go. See, so you get the plans from Drew, and then you go and get one of these built. And then maybe what you add to it is a Craigslist like 45-degree hyperextension to get some really good hinge action, or you buy yourself a trap bar and some plates. Like, you don't need to go up $2,500. I have a garage gym which is funny because, this is that business question. The problem with being successful in your own facility is that it's very hard to find people to train you, and you're training all of the time. So you don't want to be at work any more than you have to be. So last year I spent a lot of time doing Kratos, right? So I've got an old chin up, like a power rack. I've got a 45-degree hyperextension. And I've got an old trap bar. Although I don't use that very often, and some like blast straps and some like push-up handles, and I'm good to go. And I was able to ironically maintain that muscle gain from the ARX concentrated sort of push last year with once a week bodyweight training. So that is how I do it. You wouldn't need $2,500, right? It goes back to Drew's original point in the previous episode that if you're working hard enough, there are only so many good exercises, as curmudgeon-y Bill DeSimone would suggest. Like, there are only so many good exercises before you're starting to get novel for novelty's sake. You will go stale on things, but if you're working hard enough, you're going to get most of what you can possibly get out of a relatively small handful of exercises. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we're holding up powerlifters as an example, but there's some guys that that's all they do. They deadlift, they squat, and they bench press. And yes, they have the genes to be large, but they get a lot out of those three movements, right? Because number one, they're working them hard enough for long enough. And number two is they had the ability to be that muscular. So the relative dearth of exercise variety did not get in the way of them achieving their goals.
And same question to you, Ryan, as well. So you have $2,500 to build your own garage gym. How would you equip it?
What's funny about this question, Lawrence, is I'm probably the worst person to ask on this. Is I don't know the cost of home exercise equipment. That's just not in my realm of, what I do in a day. So, I mean, I guess the first thing I would suggest is to, do some research, right? Get out there and see what's available. Okay. I don't think it's necessary, just as Skyler was saying, for a home gym to spend $2,500. But hey, if you have it and you can get something that's, relatively biomechanically decent design and, relatively low friction, I'd probably, maybe choose that, and then, some free weights or whatever, or, chin up or, dip bar, whatever the case may be. I don't necessarily see the need, though, to spend $2,500 for a home gym. I think Drew would probably have a much more complete answer, because I know he does, conference calls with, home clients and stuff like that. So I don't know if what I had to add is productive on that, but that's really, it's not something I deal with at all.
It's interesting all the same. So, Drew, do you want to elaborate? And what's this plan that Skyler mentioned you have?
Nobody's going to like the answer. It depends.
I can't accept that.
I have had one of the things that I do is for people.
Damn it, Drew! Just give us a straight answer.
Barbell. Yeah, no.
Barbell.
It really.
One conclusion.
Couple things. It depends on the amount of space you have. It depends on if it's going to be on your ground floor or if you are on a second story, both because of moving it and also because of the static load capacity. Obviously, if it's going to depend on if you are in an apartment. If you're living in an apartment or condominium complex and you've got people below you, you're not going to be doing a lot of deadlifting and things like that unless you're really, really careful with it. It depends on the amount of space that you have. If you're doing anything with an Olympic bar, you need enough space both to allow a good clearance for the bar so that it's not hitting opposite walls, as well as space to get on either side to load and unload the plates. So it depends. Are you putting it in a garage? Are you putting it in a spare room? Are you putting it upstairs or downstairs? All these questions. But assuming that the space and the floor strength is not a limitation, and assuming that noise is not an issue, then for most people, what I would recommend is a very basic power rack, a sturdy bench, and a good Olympic barbell set, because most of what you need you'll be able to do on there. If you've got a good power rack, it should have a bar for chinning, and you'll be able to safely perform bench press and squat in there without a spotter. You set the safety bars so that it is just above the bottom of your range of motion so that you don't get stuck. And you don't need to spend $2,500 to get that, but if you've got it, I would. You do not want to skimp on exercise equipment. Never buy a cheap rack. Never buy a cheap bench or anything cheap. Because if you're putting a weight over your head, and if you're depending on the safety bars, if you are depending on the stability of a bench or something underneath you, then you want to have decent, strong equipment. In fact, right now, the company that I bought our new equipment from is Rogue. They make really good stuff, solid stuff. They promote a lot of goofy CrossFit crap, and they sell some really weird stuff. But their benches, their racks, and everything are great.
Now, their stuff's bomb-proof.
Oh, geez, yeah. It's all like 11 gauge. Steel. I think I can't see the plate from here, but I think they use like 3/8 inch plate. The bench that they have is they got a couple different, but the bench that they've got is absolutely rock solid. If you're getting a bench, you want to lay on it and not feel it moving. If a bench wobbles when you lay or sit on it, you don't want it. Same thing with a rack. If you set a bar into a rack and that rack wobbles a little bit, or if anything seems like it's flexing, you don't want it. Now, if somebody is really pressed for space, then dumbbells would be a better option, because a 7-foot bar, you're going to need at least about 10 feet. So you get a good 1.5 feet on either side to move around, load and unload plates. If you don't have that much space, if you're in a small apartment or if you're in a dorm room or something, dumbbells and a doorbell, a doorway chin-up bar. Yes, if a doorbell, I'm thinking kettlebell doorstop. Kettlebells are good for doorstops, not much else. If you are primarily doing body weight training and you want to throw $2,500 at it, it doesn't cost quite that much. But the body weight station that I've got, or if you've got a power rack, get attachments for it for chin-ups and dips and other things like that. What you don't want to waste money on, though, is any kind of a cheap, all-in-one home gym that is mainly, cable-driven or uses elastic resistance. And I've said before that how you train is far more important than the equipment you use. And as long as you're training correctly, you can get good results with a variety of things. But most all-in-one cable machines for the home are garbage. They tend to have really poor mechanics and really high friction. Most of the machines that have elastic resistance, like the Bowflex, the Weider crossbow, and these things, provide resistance curves that are not congruent with, not balanced to your strength curves. A barbell movement is not perfectly match your strength curve, but if you know how to do it correctly, you can get a pretty good approximation of it. And the advantage of free weights over most home machines is that a good machine is going to provide a path of movement that is correct for the joint functions being addressed in the exercise. And it will allow you to adjust your body positioning so that the positioning and the alignment is correct. And that's great, but most home machines don't do that well. If you have a machine that isn't properly designed, then it can force you into or through positions in the path of movement that could be, at the very least, inefficient for working the muscles you're trying to work. But worst case, harmful to the joints involved. You're better off having a barbell or dumbbells where you are in control of the movement, assuming you know how to do it correctly, than an improperly or poorly designed machine that forces you to move in an inefficient or possibly unsafe manner. Without going off on a real long tangent, I know a lot of people have this argument, well, machines versus free weights, it's not that simple. There's good machines and there's really bad machines, and there's a lot in between. It depends on what you're talking about. A good machine is often a better choice than free weights, but free weights are always a better choice than a bad, or I should say, not always, but almost always a better choice than a bad machine, because you then can control how you're moving with that. So if you've got a lot of space, power rack, a good adjustable bench, and a barbell set. If you don't have a lot of space, a good adjustable bench and a dumbbell set. Ideally, some of the selectorized ones, because they're very space efficient. You can very quickly switch out the weights. If you've got enough room for them, you could get a bunch of solid hex plates. Okay, but if you've got enough room to have enough different solid hex plates,
a couple questions just about fat loss and high intensity interval training. A listener asked the question, is high intensity training enough on its own? Should we be doing, high intensity training plus high intensity interval training? There's, Mark Sisson's quite well known for saying nothing cuts you up like sprints. I'm really interested to know what you guys think about that. I know, Ryan, you obviously you implement some of that in your practice. But yeah, Ryan, did you just want to kick off with your thoughts about that?
Sure. First of all, right, there's no out exercising a bad diet or too many calories, right? So you obviously need to cut back your caloric intake and eat a proper macronutrient profile for your genotype. And there's more work that's coming out on that all the time. I mean, we do have people who are poor metabolizers of carbohydrate. We also have people that are poor metabolizers of free fatty acids. And then there are some people that lie in the middle, the heterozygotes. And so there's been a few genes that have been discovered and that, that are being tested for in order to determine where you are. So there's going to be less guesswork taken out with that. So that would be where I would start. Now, as far as the exercise is concerned, at least and you and I, Lawrence, had already discussed this a bit.
Yeah.
For someone who has a tremendous metabolic response from strength training, it's kind of superfluous to do high intensity intervals. They have already achieved that metabolic response from doing the strength training. I mean, my heart rate used to get up to, I haven't measured in a while, but at one point in time, depending upon the size of the exercise and the muscle mass that you're using, I would get up to 198 beats per minute. And it would drop back down very, very quickly, of course. So I had a tremendous flexibility in my cardiovascular system, doing stuff like 198 beats per minute were leg press, squats, deadlift, and leg extensions, I think. And then even like the MedX row with the super slow cam, I got up to 196. With the smaller exercises, obviously it's not going to go that high. So for me, that was a tremendous metabolic stimulus. I do tend to be more on the fast twitch glycolytic end of the spectrum. But as Skyler had talked about earlier, and you and I had spoken about before, there's some people who they reach momentary muscular failure and they can talk. It's like almost like they're walking. And so for that person, that individual, you haven't created a metabolic response. Almost hardly at all. And I find that those, at least in my subject population I've worked with, those people tend to be more on the oxidative end of the spectrum, or more slow twitch. And so with those type of people, I found, they do benefit from the high intensity interval training on the bike. And actually the way I train someone on the intervals is going to be different than the way I would train someone who has a more fast twitch glycolytic profile. It's almost going to be reflective of the way I would train them on the strength training equipment. Someone who is more oxidative, more slow twitch, you're going to have to fatigue them more slowly over time. They're going to need to do, a longer series or more series of intervals. With someone who's going to be more on the fast twitch end of the spectrum, you can get them up really, really high. It may only take 3 30-second intervals, for example, and I have someone who's 58 years old at 193 beats per minute. Now, there's going to be, if I put someone who's oxidative and I try to ramp them up too quickly, literally their legs just give out. Their muscles give out before they've had any metabolic response whatsoever. So it's been pretty interesting experimenting with those variables with these particular subjects.
Cool. Drew, do you want to give your point of view on that training protocol?
Are we talking about for fat loss or for cardiovascular conditioning?
Primarily fat loss, but feel free to also expand on cardiovascular conditioning.
Yeah, I'm with Ryan on that. I have not had anybody so far who has had difficulty getting a significantly elevated heart rate. But in the case of somebody who does, assuming they're not also performing some other activity that would have that effect, then you might need to include some things in their workout for that. I haven't seen it, but I don't have a lot of people now that I train that are a little bit older or that are to the far left of the bell curve either. From a fat loss standpoint, it's almost entirely diet. Exercise, really the only reason that I have anybody do anything with other than strength training when they're dieting is like what we talked about with Skyler before, is it serves as it keeps them preoccupied. If they're doing something, then they're going to have a little bit more difficult time stuffing their face. If they want to go out for a bike ride, or if they get involved in some sort of other physical hobby. The other reason for doing these things is that they provide both feedback on how the workouts are affecting their performance and motivation to continue to improve. One of the reasons that body composition is considered a factor of functional ability is because the amount of fat that you have affects your strength to body weight ratio. It affects your endurance because it's additional load that has to be carried when you're doing things. It affects your flexibility because it's additional body mass that can get in the way of some movements. So if you're out doing something, some sort of a hobby, then you have additional motivation to stick with your diet, because the leaner you get, the better you'll be at whatever that hobby is, the more you're going to improve at it. But these are non-calorie related reasons for doing these things. I would never tell somebody, oh, you got to lose fat. Well, go out and run, or go out and bike, or go out and do aerobic dance class, or any of this stuff, because it's a waste of time for that purpose. Fat loss, again, it's almost entirely going to be a matter of diet. Doesn't matter what somebody does in the gym. It doesn't matter how much they run or do any of these other things. If they're not going to change the way they eat, that they're not going to lose fat. You have to change the way that you eat. There's absolutely no way around it. Nobody likes to hear it, but it's the first thing that they've got to accept. Not only do you have to change the way that you eat to lose the fat, but you never, ever get to go back to eating the way you did before if you want to keep it off after you lose it. A lot of people have this mentality that they want to lose fat, they're going to go on a diet. But that's not how it works. If you want to lose fat, you want to improve your body composition and stay that way, you have to change your diet. A diet isn't something you go on. You have to change it, or you're just going to end up back at square one if you think you're going to do this for 6 weeks or 12 weeks or a year, depending on how much you've got to lose. You never get to go back. Exercise is important for fat loss, not because it's going to burn a whole lot of calories, and not even because it's going to have a significant increase on metabolic rate. People have exaggerated this a lot. You have some people say, oh, if you get a pound of muscle, you're going to burn another 50-something calories a day. No. In fact, the amount of calories that you're going to burn more calories if you have more muscle, but that also depends on what you're doing with it. But more realistic estimates I've seen have ranged from maybe like 7 to 15 calories per pound of muscle per day. So even if you were to gain 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, you're burning maybe another 150 something calories. That's not even 2 Oreos. So it doesn't matter. You can put on a lot of muscle, and still, if you don't change your diet, that alone isn't going to do it. Part of the reason that they assumed that there was such a huge increase in the calories burned from gaining muscle is because there is also a cost in terms of energy, because they increased protein turnover following workouts, and the effect on basically your body needs energy, and it needs protein, needs a certain amount of material and energy for recovery, and that causes an increase in people who are regularly strength training. But it's not because of the gain in muscle that you see that much of an increase. It's the combination, a little bit from the muscle, but also a lot because of the additional costs of recovery from the workouts. But you want to make sure that you're exercising when you're trying to lose fat, so that you're just losing fat and not muscle mass along with it. But to exercise for the sake of burning calories, waste of time. Again, if you're going to be active, you have to make a distinction between activity and exercise. You should be active, but your reasons for choosing an activity shouldn't be calorie burning, because nothing you do is going to burn enough calories to make it worth spending time to do that. That'd be like going for a drive just for the sake of using gas. If you're going to do some other activity, pick something that you enjoy, pick something that interests you, or that has some other psychological or social benefits, so that you have a reason other than fat loss to do it. One, again, because of the things that we talked about previously with just the general health activities or health benefits of physical activity. Also because of the motivating factor. When you're out doing something, it's going to motivate you to want to be in better shape so you can be better at it. But also you want to pick something that you enjoy because you don't want to just do it until you're done with your body composition goals. It should be something that you could participate in a long-term basis. But real quick on that note, another reason that it is so important to make a distinction between exercise and activity is that everybody needs exercise. If you want to be as healthy, if you want to be as fit as you possibly can, you need exercise. And if people wrongly believe that things like jogging or cycling or group cardio classes count as exercise, then they might think, well, I'm exercising, and they're not. And so they're not getting real exercise, and they're not getting all the potential benefits of it. So it's very important when talking about exercise to make sure that people understand that only this kind of thing, only this progressive resistance training qualifies as exercise, and all this other stuff isn't, because you don't want them to think that they're getting everything they need from, some people say like they think gardening or walking or raking the leaves or stuff like that is exercise, and it's just not. Anyways, off on a tangent there, but for fat loss, diet is almost all of it.
Diet is critical. Ryan, I want to ask you some questions in relation to the industry in general and some of the latest research. What do you think can be done to further educate the general public about evidence-based exercise or high-intensity training in the face of the mainstream fitness industry and media's decades of misinformation?
Lawrence, I think we're doing it right now. I'm serious about that. The more, and this is why I requested that you interview Tim Allerton. I really think we need to tap not only like people like me and Drew and, some of these, but also some of the people that are actually doing the research. And so we don't often see enough scientists, the people that are actually doing the data manipulation or at least accruing the data, that are being interviewed or even spoken to. Traditionally, they would just publish their research in a journal that very few people would read, and that was it. I mean, so I think it's critically important what you are doing and to continually get those subjects on your program, even if they don't agree with what Drew and I talk about. So I think you're doing a valuable service by continuing to plug along. And I think we need to probably see more of that, not just in podcast format, but, writing and, stuff like that. Also, I know Adam Zickerman, I had been on his podcast, and it's not as technical as yours. It's more for, for the general population. But I think it's really, really important. Obviously, Drew does a really good job of that. And what's helped for a very long time, and I think what really made Super Slow popular at first, was the fact that we were all out there doing our work on the ground. Okay. And when they went proprietary with the Super Slow Zone, and I had spoken to Ken about this at length, and Madeline Ross at the time, and I'm sure Drew and I had spoke about it a lot too. They were kind of sticking the bird finger to everyone that had supported them for so long. All of us, reason why Super Slow got popular, or as that part of high intensity training got popular, wasn't just because of Ken Hutchins. It was because we were all out there doing our jobs on the ground and influencing people. And so, that's when we started to see much more growth in the industry. As far as high intensity training, there was, I remember Ken saying, I don't even know if I could stop this if I wanted to. There were so many more articles and interviews and books and this and that. And, and so I think
what happened?
Oh, what happened? So basically, Drew can actually tell you more than I could, because he actually was working for the company at the time. At the time, after you left, I think, or after you had cut ties, I was offered it was after Katrina. They wanted me to be the director of education.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, and also I got offered at this time. So MedX and SuperSlow had a joint venture at this point in time where MedX was manufacturing SuperSlow equipment. And they were trying to sell it as a solution. You would buy a franchise. But one of the things that they did is they tried to force the franchise on studios that had already been doing this for so long. Okay, and you couldn't use the word or whatever the case may be in your title or on your website or yada, 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 okay? And so when they went proprietary, the quality of the certification went way down because they had to sell franchises, right? So everybody... Yeah, it took a nosedive. And so, so the quality of certification went way, way down. It just wasn't as stringent as it used to be. And people that had been practicing it for a long time, this is not something you could sell like a Starbucks or something like that. In order to do what we do requires significantly more intellectual power, okay, and skill than making a cup of coffee or whatever the case, or flipping a burger or whatever the case may be. So the quality of the teaching went down, and also, I knew a few people that worked at some of the franchises. Just like a franchise, you go to McDonald's, you're going to get a Big Mac. It's going to be a Big Mac, okay? Basically, the instructors were extremely limited in their freedom to instruct. Like, they wanted things by the manual. You're going to start out with these 5 exercises, and so you had little creativity or to work around what their strict protocol was at the time. And I was really, when Ken first told me about that, I was very concerned for the future of that and what we were doing as a group in an industry, that it was going to be really, really restricted. Like, you couldn't even buy the SuperSlow manual anymore. You used to be able to buy it just fine. You start restricting the information, you start restricting everything. And Drew can expand on that because he was actually working for the company.
Yeah, we regularly had meetings, Ken and Brenda Hutchins and myself, trying to figure out ways to remove the CEO because of how bad things were going because of her. Unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen because the money was coming from MedX for this, and MedX's CEO was involved with the SuperSlow Zone CEO. Unaware to us at the time, they had been conning people and doing all sorts of nefarious. Been involved in some stuff before that. It was unfortunately a big con, and oh man, I don't want to speculate too much, and I don't know how much is still going on legally, but the biggest problems were, you started out with this organization that Ken had worked a long time on, very hard to build, which had a certification, which was probably the best certification for somebody who wanted to demonstrate that they were a competent instructor. It was very rigorous, a lengthy written exam, oral exam following that, where you had to be able to, recite and explain a bunch of things, followed by a very rigorous practical exam. And even more important, what Ken got, and the way that this exam was designed, which a lot of trainer exams aren't, is it was not just about how much you know about exercise, but how effectively are you able to teach it. A lot of practical exams require that the test taker show how to do an exercise. Well, your ability to do something is not the same as your ability to effectively teach somebody else to do it, much less to be able to identify and correct problems with the way that somebody else does it. And this exam went into a lot of detail with that. It was something that if you passed the Super Slow Exercise Guild Level 1 certification, you had something to be proud of, because that was rigorous. It was very rigorous. And what happened with the zone is, first off, because it was a franchise, they were getting people that were not looking specifically to do something in exercise. They were getting people that were looking for some kind of a business to start. And some of these people, it came down to a decision, well, do we start a Super Slow Zone franchise, or do we open a coffee shop or a bakery or something? They didn't care. They were looking for a business. So you got a lot of people, you attracted people that were looking for a business opportunity rather than people that were passionate about exercise and wanting to help people, and came up that way. So there were a lot of people that were coming into it that had no idea what they were doing. And the second problem is Madeline, the CEO, she really had nothing to offer a lot of the people that were already involved, because there were so many people that were already running successful businesses doing this. They had their equipment, they had certified trainers, they had a good clientele, they already had their own marketing in place. There was no reason for any of them to pay a franchise fee to come on with the Super Slow Zone. And so instead of trying to sweeten the deal and to offer some sort of value and say, okay, well, we're going to do all these things for you, instead they said, well, if you don't, we're going to take this away from you. And so she made it so that nobody could purchase the technical manual if they were not part of this franchise. Nobody could have their instructors certified under the Super Slow name if they were not part of this franchise. And that alienated all of these people who had been helping to build this up all along. Unfortunately, in the process, they also dumbed the certification down, because these people were buying the franchises and they wanted to be able to get them up and running quickly. They didn't want to have to wait several months for their trainers to go through some sort of rigorous apprenticeship to be able to get to a point where they were actually qualified. They wanted to take people, put them through a weekend workshop, certify them, and have them out on the floor training people. And that's what you get with some of these like really crappy certifications out there. So part of my job was going to some of these that opened up, or when people came here, working with people here, and helping them to prepare for the certification. And it was an absolute nightmare, because most of these people had no idea what they were doing. And even worse, some of them didn't even seem to care. And I remember the moment I decided to quit. I had been sent to Eagle, Idaho to do a workshop, to spend a few days there helping this couple who had purchased a franchise prepare for their certification exam. Or that's what I was told. I was going out there to help them prepare for the certification exam. And I assumed, because getting the franchise and going through all the stuff was at least it took a few month process, that they had already spent this time at least trying to learn and prepare for it. But when I arrived there, neither of them had even bothered to look at the technical manual or any of the study materials. They expected me to go there on a Tuesday and Wednesday, and then fly back on a Thursday, and to prepare them for an exam on Friday. And I explained to them that there was absolutely no way that they were going to learn that stuff in this time. And I said that the most I can do is go over, the equipment with them and how to properly use these machines, how to teach people how to get into them and set them up and how to use them and how to get them out and everything. So I went over some of that. But even as I was trying to do this, they were joking around. They weren't paying attention. They weren't taking any of it seriously. And so I called Ken on Thursday, and I said, there is no way these people should be coming to take the exam. They have no idea what they're doing. They're not taking any of it seriously. And Madeline ended up overriding that. And I got there that Friday, and basically she insisted that they were to be passed because they had paid for the franchise and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, fine, I quit.
Yeah, enough said.
It was...
Yeah, I was not going to stay with that because it was infuriating because this name was the word super slow used to hold some sort of meaning in terms of the standards for being an instructor. And I'll say to this day, the people who were certified by the Super Slow Exercise Guild back before the early 2000s, before this whole thing with the Super Slow Zone, are some of the best trainers out there. And if you're lucky enough to find somebody who has had a lengthy apprenticeship under one of these people, then they are probably a good trainer as well. But the people that were certified by the Super Slow Zone after that, no. And even most people in high-intensity training. And I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people saying it, but hey, if they're upset by it, then maybe they need to up their game. But a lot of people in high-intensity training pay lip service to good form, but what they demonstrate is anything but. And they would be very well served by finding the closest person that had gone through the original SSEG certification and asking to spend a few weeks with them learning, or just pay them to spend a few days working with them, going over all this stuff. Most HIT trainers would be surprised at how much they don't know about good form if they did that.
Who are some of the names that come to mind that were in that original, that did the original certification? I'm wondering how many of those have been on the show.
Well, it was Ryan,
several
of course.
have been on it. Yeah, I had gotten Drew, you and I both did level 1 in early 90s?
I did the level 1 twice. I did the level 1 with Tim Ryan in 1994, and I came down here to work with Ken. I moved here in 1996, and Ken insisted that I go through the level 1 again with him because he wanted to make sure. There was a thing with him and Tim Ryan going on. They were agreeing about some stuff at the time, and he wanted to make absolutely sure that I was doing it. And so I went through that twice. I had to go through it with Tim, went through it with Ken again down here.
So, Lawrence, I had done mine, I think it was 92 or 93. I want to say 92. And I did that with Ken. And the original examination, you had to study for years for this. Most of us had put years into working, to actually learn this stuff. It was a 4-day examination from what I remember. Is that right, Drew?
It was the way that they set it up. There would be one day would be the workshop, is usually going on a Friday for the workshop, and then you would take the written exam Friday evening. And then after the written exam, if you passed that, there would be the oral exam. And during the oral exam, if Ken or whoever was doing the test if any of your answers were iffy, they might give you a chance. Because I remember there was only one question that I got wrong on the written exam, and it was a question about insurance. If the insurance company insists that you keep a workout chart, and if you're not sure about the exact number of repetitions, what do you write? And I'm like, well, screw the insurance company. I'll just I'll keep a separate set of numbers for them. Which wasn't the answer. But then you would have a full day on set. If you passed the written and the oral, you would have a full day on Saturday of the practical exam, and this could take anywhere from 4 to 8 hours.
It sounds like
intense,
it sounds
Lawrence.
like Cisco networking, CCIE, or something like that.
It was very intense, and I did level 2 in master, so that was actually a 10-day examination. I got the highest grade on I had a 99.5 on my written exam, and the only question I missed was the photography setup for fat loss comparison.
Geez.
I'm not a photographer. I don't care about that. I'm a physiologist. But anyway,
I still remember that stuff. The right and the left flashes had to be 3 feet off on the diagonal, and they were 8 feet high, and the one on the right was 1 f-stop higher than the one on the left, and there was an 8-foot square in the center with a slope from 8 back up to 10 feet in the back. Oh my gosh, it's burned into my brain. I didn't take the level 2 because there was no reason for me to do it because I was in the same area as Ken. But yeah, I remember all the photography stuff to this day. It was.
I actually had to build equipment, Lawrence. I had to know how to cut a cam and how to measure it mathematically and do all. I mean, it was very, very intense. And so some of the other names, Tim Ryan, Fred Hahn, were some early guys.
Robert Francis.
Robert Francis.
Dennis
Andrew. Yeah, Dennis. Excellent.
Rob Serrano.
I remember Rob Serrano very well. He actually called me more or less recently. I can't remember.
Greg Anderson. Can't forget Greg.
Yeah, no, we can't forget Greg. Al Coleman came along a little later. But he was still in there earlier on. Man, there were so many people involved at first. It was, we used to have yearly conventions, and when they first started, it was extremely informative. Lawrence, it was actually really, really quite incredible from what I recall. I mean, we got into some real technical stuff and what was interesting about this is that this is when Clay Steffi was the lead engineer at Medix, I believe. The engineers
95
at Medix,
came out.
Yeah, the engineers at Medix and Nautilus would come to consult with us on their equipment design.
Phil Sensel.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So we actually, that small group of people had a large impact on our thoughts on equipment design, and because we were so studied on it, it was really amazing.
That's fascinating. It's not something I know a lot about. I didn't realize. Obviously, I'm aware of the Super Slow Guild, and I had a listener, send me a list of all of the people that I think went through the accreditation back then. But now hearing you guys talk about it, I can really appreciate the rigor, and it makes sense as to why you guys and some of those you mentioned are some of the top trainers in the world. I want to move on to another question in terms of the most exciting research that you both know of. What is the most promising or exciting new area of research in exercise science, and what findings do you anticipate there being made over the next 10 years? Put that to Ryan because I know he's
I'll let him dig into that one first.
Yeah. So honestly, just as we're seeing genetically based medicine, even like psychiatrists are even doing a DNA analysis to see what there's less guesswork done, what antidepressants you're going to respond best to, or if you're a cancer patient, what chemotherapy drugs are going to work, or if they're going to work at all. I mean, we're really starting to see, and it's already happening now, genetically based exercise. I'm working with DNA Fit now. I've actually completed the coursework. Well, the online coursework. I have to do a few written projects to get my company certified, Exercise Science LLC, to offer the genetics testing. And I've been in touch with some representatives from the company that requested, I said, man, I'd love to see these other additional genes being tested. And they pretty much came back with, we can test any gene you want. Are you interested in collaborating on data analysis? And I'm like, hell yeah. So they can test for any genes I want. So they're testing for a number of genes. I'll just give you the groups instead of the individual genes, but we're looking at genes, obviously for stuff like microtome accumulation. There's a number of genes that determines your fast twitch, glycolytic, slow twitch, oxidative profile. And that while most people fall in the middle, you do have some that are like 60, 40, 70, 30, but even 90 to 10 from one degree or another. And then they're looking at genes that have to do with recovery ability, not just genes that determine your inflammatory response. So if you have a massive inflammatory response, it's going to take you a lot longer to recover because you're actually creating a lot more biochemical damage. And but also genes for oxidative stress, so like free radical damage from exercise, and protein and collagen synthesis rates. Also, various nutritional factors, vitamin D receptor, whether or not you're going to do well with caffeine, or all these different things that it's actually available now. Also, they're looking at like endothelial growth factors, capillary density, cardiovascular capacity. There's a number of genes that they're testing. I think it's 44 genes right now, and they're interested in increasing more. They have certain criteria that have to be met. Like there has to be at least 3 studies done on a gene's either exercise or diet capacity to affect. And it has to either affect athletic performance or health. So I'm sure there's more criteria than that. So I'm really, really excited to be doing this, and I'm really hoping to, seriously add to the company's collection of genes. And I think it's going to go a long way, a very long way into. Oh God, hold on, guys. I'm sorry, my phone's going on. Anyway, so I think it's going to go a long way into taking the guesswork out. Matter of fact, they did publish some research, Lawrence, and I can send it to you. It's pretty interesting. One was on the exercise component. They just looked at people who were either more slow twitch or more fast twitch, and all they did was they didn't try to figure out like we do, like specific time under load and all this other stuff. Okay. So they just took 2 programs. They took one that they called, I guess, a strength and power program that a fast twitch subject would participate in. And then they had I guess they called it like an endurance-based strength training program that a slow twitch subject would participate in. And so they took people that fell more towards the fast twitch end of the spectrum and trained them in their respective training protocol. And they did the same thing with the slow twitch subjects. However, they also reversed them. They took fast twitch subjects and trained them as if they were slow twitch, and they took slow twitch and changed them if they were fast twitch. And when you trained according to your genotype, the number of positive responders was so much greater than the number of low responders. It was by far like way out there. Okay. And so if you trained according to your genotype, there were, at least with the genes that we have now that they're measuring, you had a much better outcome. Well, when they did the reverse and they trained them opposite to the genotype, the number of negative responders or low responders was huge, was much larger than the positive responders. So even in the short time from the last time you and I had talked about training for your genotype and the stuff that I was looking at by observing fatigue responses, Now there's actually tests for that at least can give you an indication of where to put someone. So it's pretty cool. And I think that is going to, I will beat that genetic drum as loud as I can, because everybody's looking for a simple answer. And as Drew said, it depends. And a lot of it depends on your genes, I mean, that's just the bottom line. And I think that we're going to see when that grows and grows and continues, and the more we learn, and we're learning at an extremely rapid pace, and we're understanding how these genes interact with each other, but we're still learning. There's still much more learning to be done, but there is enough data out there now, I can honestly say that it can give us a really good idea of what we need to do with someone. And I will say this again, if research does not contain a genetic component, I'm not even interested in really looking at it. I'm just not. It's pointless.
Well said. Drew, anything you want to add to that in terms of new research and exercise science?
Really, really quick comment on the training against type. And I talked with Ryan about this a while back. I decided to actually do that for a while just to see, and my results were crap. I generally respond best with a little bit shorter time under load. And just to see what would happen if I attempted I almost doubled it. Most of my upper body exercises, if I'm about 45 to 60 seconds, that's about it. And I'm on lower body, maybe about 50 to 70, 75 or so. And for a while, I was doing 60 to 90. Considerably higher on the upper body, and pushing some of the lower body stuff about 90 to 120, just to see. And I got it was bad, especially for the lower body. I ended up actually just feeling like crap all the time. Legs were fatigued. As soon as I switched back, there was a noticeable difference. So it is really important that when you're training somebody, that you consider anything a starting point from which to adjust based on how that individual responds. And you can't just say, this is how many reps you should do, or this much time, or this much exercises. I tell people, we're going to aim for the middle starting out, and we will adjust based on how your body responds, because that does vary. If you start with the average, you're going to at least be a little bit closer with most people, but it always has to be considered a starting point. There's no program, there's no set of specific guidelines that is best for everybody. It all has to be considered a starting point from which to make adjustments based on individual response. But that is a lot of work. You have to first off, you got to keep track of what people are doing, and you have to look for patterns in how their body's responding. Then you have to make adjustments based on those patterns you're seeing, and then you have to evaluate the change in response to the adjustment to determine if you are adjusting in the right direction or not. It's a lot of experimentation and record keeping and knowing what to look for and how to change it and how much, while keeping in mind that sometimes one change is going to affect a bunch of other things. So you got to watch all these things too. A lot of tweaking to get it right for a person. That's where the art of this comes in, and being able to see these things and make the adjustments. Having research that helps identify the best approach for a particular individual, or at least the direction to move with these things based on their genes, is going to make this process so much easier. You're going to be able to take somebody and have them get a genetic test and have it come back, and instead of aiming for the middle and then adjusting all these things, you'll get a pretty good idea starting out. Okay, well, based on this, we might need to have you train less frequently, and we should probably be using a little bit longer time for these particular exercises, et cetera, et cetera. It is going to make it a lot easier. And I think even more importantly, just that they're looking at this is going to bring more light to the fact that there is a tremendous variability between people, and that it is idiotic for the genetically average drug-free trainee to try to follow the exact same exercise regimens that high-level athletes are using. The principles are exactly the same. The principles are universal. Doesn't matter who you are, the exact same principles are going to work for you. But the way that those principles are applied has to take into consideration individual response to exercise, goals, lifestyle and circumstances that affect their ability to exercise consistently, a lot of other things. So that'll make that a lot easier. The thing that that's actually the thing that I'm probably most excited about. But something else that I am interested in, I mentioned it earlier, is there's some research that shows that there may be a beneficial effect from strength training for people with a variety of neurodegenerative diseases. I know people with multiple sclerosis. I've had relatives and friends who've had this. I've had clients in the past who had MS. Unfortunately, I've got the Alzheimer's runs on my mother's side of the family, so I'm hoping that doesn't become an issue, or at least stave it off by eating well and exercising. But I think this, and also there's research that shows that resistance training can reverse, not stop, not slow down, but actually reverse the effect of aging on a lot of different genes. In fact, I brought this up really quick while Ryan was talking. There was a study, and Doug McGuffin mentioned this a while back, is resistance exercise reverses aging in human skeletal muscle. And I'll send you the reference.
Yeah.
But it says human aging is associated with skeletal muscle atrophy. And actually, I'll just skip ahead to the most important part. It says, following exercise training, the transcriptional signature of aging was markedly reversed.
Yep.
Back to that of younger levels for most genes that were affected by both age and exercise. We conclude that healthy older adults show evidence of mitochondrial impairment and muscle weakness, but that this can be partially reversed at the phenotypic level and substantially reversed at the transcriptome level following 6 months of resistance exercise training. So if people are investing all this time and money into all this anti-aging stuff, looking at nutrition and supplements and a lot of things which obviously will have some effect, but they should be looking even more at exercise, and even more importantly at how to do this stuff properly so that you're not wrecking your body at the same time, because a lot of things that people do for exercise in the pursuit of better health and functional ability can actually be counterproductive in the long run. So if you could do it correctly where you got these benefits without all the negatives associated with the way a lot of other people train, that would be great. And the more we learn about it, of course, the better we can tailor exercise prescription to these particular goals.
Lawrence, I have that write-up on that same study on my website. It was done in 2007, and they looked at a total of 596 genes. And approximately half of those genes decreased their protein expression with the aging process, and half increased their protein expression with the aging process. And when they put these older subjects on the resistance training program after 6 months, everything reversed. All the genes that decreased started to increase, and so you didn't change your genotype, but you changed the expression. And so in order for the study to actually say that, scientists are usually extremely measured in their wording. For example, one study I had gone over, we might look at it, says high-intensity resistance exercises increases insulin-like growth factor 1 splice variant expression in human skeletal muscle. Unless you're physiology geeks like we are, most people aren't going to know what the hell that means. But so scientists have to be extremely measured in their wording. So there has to be a tremendous amount of evidence, a tremendous amount. So when they looked at all these different genes, again, 596, and they all reversed, just the name of that study alone sent a chill up my spine. Resistance exercises reverses aging in human skeletal muscle. That is so damn powerful this is what Ponce de Leon was looking for, the Fountain of Youth.
And yes, the Fountain of Youth. Yeah.
Should have been looking for the Barbell of Youth.
Yeah, I know. I remember the study, and I remember Doug talking about how he described sifting through research like kissing a lot of frogs before you find a prince, and then he found that study and he was overjoyed. And no, it's absolutely fascinating, and it's another one of those things you can add to your list of why you should do this. And Drew, it wasn't long ago we were talking about value judgment, and that's a pretty big value right there if you can. Reverse.
Oh yeah, that's what most people want. If you look at what a lot of people look at marketing, and typically good marketing appeals to what people want, and most people want to project a image of themselves that is youthful and energetic. Well, I think identity, I think your actual being is far more important than the image you project. And this is one way that people can not just look younger and not just project an image of being younger, but actually physically reverse some of these negative effects. It amazes me. It absolutely amazes me that there are so many people out there that will spend money on all sorts of superficial cosmetics and clothes and all sorts of stuff to make themselves more attractive, but they won't put a little bit of effort and time into doing the same with the body that they're putting the clothes and cosmetics on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, this is, especially we got I'm not going to bring up names, but I know some older guys that are in their 50s and 60s that are single again that regularly post about how ridiculous it is dating at that age, and just a lot of it comes down to that just the weird things that people do at that age to try and maintain a youthful appearance or to come across as more attractive when they are single and putting themselves on the market again. It's absurd. Cool.
Final question for you both. This is the longest podcast I think I've ever done. So you first, Ryan, and what books or what health and fitness books have you reread the most yourself?
Lawrence, I don't read health and fitness books. I read research. I live in a data-driven world. So it was interesting on I'm going to give a call out to James Fisher to please listen, if he hasn't, to our first podcast together, because I think he only listened to the second. He made a statement that that I've done some reading, but it's been mostly philosophical. And that is actually the opposite. While I've done my share of philosophical readings of Jones, Metzner, yada, yada, my head stays firmly planted in the research literature. And in that first podcast, you and I discussed a lot of studies, and so I request him to go and please listen to the first one, and that's all I do. I don't read anything else. And with the internet, much of this stuff is freely available. You can't always get the full text of the articles, but when you can, do. And that's all I can tell. So I'm just going to tell people PubMed. That's the way to go.
No, I appreciate it. Same to you, Drew.
Oh boy. Like I told you before, I make a habit to read a lot of fitness books, but for a very different reason than most people do. As you know, a large part of my business now is doing consulting, and a lot of times I get people asking questions about things that they've read in the fitness magazines or read in some of these books. So I don't read a lot of these books specifically because I'm looking for information in them. Rather, I read them so that I'm familiar with the kind of nonsense my potential clients are being exposed to, so that I can already have gone through all the time thinking about it and looking at whatever rationalities other people might have behind it, so that I can can better explain why it's a bunch of bullshit. Of course, I keep my mind open when I'm reading this stuff, but a lot of times, I'll pick up books even if I know that they're going to be garbage, because I need to know what kind of garbage I'm going to have to debunk with this new person starting next week or whatever. So I read the stuff not because I'm hoping to get any, information from it, but because I need to prepare for dealing with all the silly questions that people will have after they've read it. So I don't even want to promote any of that stuff.
Forgive me, I know you answered it in our previous.
That's all right. Yeah. But maybe some people didn't listen to that one. They're listening to this one. They'll go back. Most of what I read, I'll cruise PubMed and nutrition and some of the other online journals and stuff. Fortunately, I'm back in school right now, finishing up BS in health science, so I have access to these journals now, which is great because I don't have to worry about digging around and seeing if I can forever to find a PDF that I don't have to pay $30-$40 for when I want to read a study. But what I do spend more time now reading about is language and teaching, because as much as it is important to understand all of this stuff, it is also important to be able to effectively convey some of the higher level thinking in a way that people can get it more easily. And so I've been reading a lot of stuff by people like Steven Pinker and Daniel Dennett on language and thought. And those have been really useful for this. And occasionally, it doesn't have anything to do directly with exercise, but occasionally, you're reading this stuff, you're going to have an aha moment, and you're going to realize this is the best way to explain that thing, and do so in a manner that people more easily get it. So that, in some philosophy, I'm right now, but what I'm rereading is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and hold on a second to get the other one over here. Yeah, and Seneca, Letters from a Stoic. So, going through some of that again. Every once in a while, I'll go and I'll pull something off the shelves that I haven't read for a while and flip through it. Except right now I've got a 2-read pile that is, the 1 2-read pile that I've gotten here is about 4 books deep. But the other 2, and I recommend these to trainers a lot, and I know Ryan would probably second me on this, is one of the things that I refer back to frequently. And I have never read it from cover to cover, but I'll jump in and I'll do a chapter here and a chapter there. Skeletal Muscle Structure, Function, and Plasticity by Richard Lieber. It's a therapy textbook. It's a great textbook. And Joint Structure and Function, A Comprehensive Analysis by Pamela Levangie and Cynthia Norkin. Those are 2 that I probably go back through relatively frequently.
Yeah, the Richard Lieber, that's a muscle physiology, like graduate level text, Lawrence. So you kind of have to have a little bit of knowledge and physiology already. Well, no, just for your audience. If they're pretty geeked up on it, well, it's like if you don't have any background in anatomy and physiology, you jump right to that book, you might be lost. Yeah. So
got it.
It's cool. But it is really for any trainers. That is something that they don't teach in many exercise phys courses, unfortunately, is muscle physiology. And that is where the largest adaptation occurs, is at the cellular level in the muscle.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been epic. What is the best way for people to contact you both? Drew, do you want to start, and then Brian can follow?
Sure. The easiest way to contact me is through Baye.com. It's at BAYE.com. They can buy my books there, sign up for consultations, shoot me emails, all that stuff.
For me, again, you could go to the website. It'll give you all the contact info. It's exercisesciencellc.com.
Cool. And I will speak on behalf of Skyler, who's no longer with us. So to find out more about Skyler, his blog and Smart Strength, his business, go to skylertanner.com. And for all of the show notes, links, resources, research papers, everything we've spoken about, and all the people we mentioned on this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Before you head off, head on over to corpwarrior.com to get your free ebook with 6 interview transcripts of some of my top guests, including Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Baye, and Bill Simone, on how to optimize muscle gain, fat loss, and overall health in an efficient, effective, and sustainable way. These transcripts are not verbatim, deliberately. Instead, they've been transcribed in an easy read format to make it more enjoyable and easier for you to quickly pick out what you need and start getting results. To get your ebook, head on over to corpwarrior.com, that's CORP warrior.com, and enter your email address. Then check your email for an email from me with a confirmation link. Once you click the link, you will be instantly redirected to a PDF version of the transcripts. This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. This podcast is brought to you by HitUni.com. HitUni.com are a provider of amazing online courses for high-intensity training qualifications. HitUni comes highly recommended by the best in the field, including Body by Science co-author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, and trainer and founder of Baye.com, Drew Baye. It was founded by my friend, author, and longtime personal trainer Simon Shawcross, who's also been a guest on the podcast. Simon has 15 years experience training clients and has supervised over 15,000 high-intensity training workouts. Using knowledge from experts like Skyler Tanner, Dr. James Steele, Dr. Ellington Darden, HitUni is a goldmine for learning everything to do with high-intensity training. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace. There's online support and a discussion forum where you can share ideas and ask for help. To learn more about high-intensity training and improve my own results, I started their personal trainer course. The content is amazing, the courses are really easy to follow, and each section is organized into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one. I should also mention there is a DIY course, so this is the course for you if you're not necessarily a personal trainer, but you want to learn more about high-intensity training and how to implement it for maximum benefit in your own exercise regime. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's HITUNI.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, pick your course, and enter the coupon code CW10 for 10% discount. Thank you for your support.